What's up, everyone? We have ourselves a parking lot video. If you want to see weird activities, just go to a parking lot. I'm out here because the little one's asleep at a nap and the mom is home working out, so it's noisy in there. And my traditional podcast space is taken, but that's okay. Fine adjustments. I just drove to this parking lot, and it's like me. It's a giant parking lot, and it's like me and a couple cars, and you always see the weirdest things in here. I'm always wondering what people are doing in their parked car in a parking lot. Well, I'm making a podcast. Speaking of podcasting and running your own race, that's kind of the theme of today. I got someone who messaged me, who left a comment on Instagram. I'll read it to you verbatim. And it's funny because it fits in with the theme of the topic today. I was going to make this video regardless of this comment, but it's very fitting nonetheless. So it said, I made a video basically saying, hey, who I am, I train people. I've always thought about and wanted to be a professional basketball player. I want to see if I could do it, Can I give myself 18 months, 12 months to see if I can really become one? Professional basketball player is not NBA. There are a lot of options out there. Comments, no sense of following a dead-end dream, ... unfollowed. And this is awesome because it's not about haters or anything. It's about running your own race. And when you post things on social media, if you think of your whole journey like a river, from the start or the peak of a mountain where that river starts and it trickles all the way down to eventually the end, which maybe I guess is the ocean, there are people who are going to walk in that river at many different points in time and never know the origin story or even the end story of your journey. And so often you'll feel justified to try and validate what you're doing. Like, a younger me would be like, oh, of course I can be pro. There's all these different levels. Let me explain it to you. And I'm exerting so much energy to convince someone that doesn't cut me a check that what I'm doing is good for me. And that's a level of insecurity. And the reason why I talk about this is because I follow the Indiana Fever, and Caitlin Clark plays for the Fever. And I have a level of admiration for her mental fortitude at something that's far higher than I could ever myself imagine being able to do. For example, sorry, I'm totally distracted. This person just did a U-turn right in front of me. I thought it was my old basketball teammate. I was like, how did he find me? Sorry about that. The fact that she goes into a league and, let's start back. Let's say she's like second to last year in college. She loses the national championship. Obviously, a lot of debate. People love her. Some people dislike her. Plays again the next season, gets the national championship, loses again in the national championship. Some people dislike her. Some people like her. Goes into the WNBA. A lot of animosity towards her from current WNBA players, former WNBA players. Again, people love her still, but her peers might not express the same sentiment. Gets left off the USA Olympic team. There's some argument maybe she shouldn't be on it, and a lot of argument that she should be on it. At no point in time has she come out and tried to justify how good she is. Says something of, I'm this, I'm that. No matter the slump she might be in or not slump she's in or how well she's not playing, it's the same mindset. And that's, for me, it clicked when I started to think about that. Like, wow, you are really doing this for yourself. Because a player, if I go play pickup basketball, and I'm playing amongst players who I don't know, there's some, level of pressure to showcase myself to a level that validates myself. Like, oh, I played so well, and they're going to tell me I played well. Now I feel validated. That's not running your own race. That's being concerned with someone else. And being on social media or being in a situation in a company or doing your own endeavor, if you're constantly trying to seek out validation from something else, you're not running your own race. Now, this doesn't mean be blind to what's going on, because on the other end, I'll speak about this as a content creator. Yes, I want to showcase my content. I am a dual existence. I am a person trying to play basketball at the highest level I possibly can, and I also make content. The content does help me at times get noticed for basketball. So if I'm going to film my workouts, I'm going to make content. I'm trying to make the best content that can be consumed within a lens I feel that represents myself. And I don't pay attention to any of the analytics. Well, that's not really smart neither, because if part of my race is to get exposure for my page, and so I can make small adjustments like editing a video in a certain way, having captions or having movement in the video, not changing the substance, not changing the intent, not changing the actual narrative of my content, but modifying it to make it more consumable, that is running your own race. To just go out there and put the same content out over and over again and get less and less views, I guess you're not even putting content out there for the sake of content, you're just merely putting content out there and just hoping for the best. So there's a fine line you have to walk, because what you're trying to accomplish is you're trying to accomplish something that is for you, that's within your own, definition of what you want to be. So I want to be a professional basketball player. I'm not going to go and start making content of me. I'm not going to start deviating my workouts for the sake of making better content. I can edit the current content I have to make better content, but I'm not going to deviate my workouts to make better content. So that's how I feel like I can run my own race on social media. I can keep my head down, I can focus on me being the best I can be, and at the same time making the content the best it can be, and not trying to validate my content like, oh, more people should watch my stuff, or less people should be mean to me. No, I'm just making it the best I can make it. And all the way from growing up as a kid, when you're very little, I'm raising a young one right now, you're constantly seeking out information that you're doing something right. Whether you're in a relationship, in a marriage, and you're trying to make sure the significant other is happy, you're constantly, probably making sure what you do is okay and happy with them. You fold the clothes the right way or cook the food the right way. You're constantly, as a kid growing up, to make sure that you follow the right rules with your parents. You did the right things with your teachers. You did the right things with your classmates. There's always so much structure in life from the day we enter the schooling system to the day we leave. And when we leave, we just go and put ourselves in another structured system where our validation and existence is often predicated on someone else's opinion of us, which is why you get a lot of people who maybe will say certain things to put themselves in a certain light amongst some other peers and maybe professionals that have a higher standing than them, so they themselves can then be put once on that pedestal of being higher up. And it's this endless game of trying to get to the top, not through maybe focusing on yourself and being the best you can be, but playing the game that is validation. When you go and try and do something that is outside of that structure, like me trying to make a professional basketball team, the validation doesn't matter. There is no person I can go to and be like, oh, I hope you tell me I'm playing really well. Will you now give me a contract? Now, there is some extent to that, because if I do make a professional roster and I get on a team, there's going to be an aspect of I have to play a certain way that the coach deems appropriate. That's not as much about validation as much as it is system fit, understanding your role and your responsibilities, because every game is going to be a stress test in the sense that there's an objective win or loss, and based on the win or loss and how that occurred, there might be pieces that get reshuffled or placed in different positions, and knowing how those are manipulated and moved is my job to fill those roles. Very different than being trying to convince someone that what you're doing is very important and very significant. And oftentimes in social media, because we're dealing with a non-tangible asset, I'm putting out content that you cannot physically interact with. It's basically a hey, I'm trying to convince you, a sales pitch on every single thing, which is disheartening at times, because then you see some aspect of that get magnified, because maybe that's a successful means to get the most short-term engagement, probably. Long-term is not the best, because if you're constantly reliant on a sales pitch, then you're constantly reliant on a new sales pitch. But the idea is that our social structure has this emergent pattern that comes out of validation, enforcing validation, because we've put ourselves within structural frameworks that require validation in order to move elsewhere. And so when you focus on yourself and you try to accomplish something, there's a level of, what's the right word? Like ambiguity to it. There's a level of lack of guardrails. There's like you're a boat on an ocean with no compass and no map, and you have to find your way and maybe use the stars to navigate. There's a freedom, but then there is a looming, I don't call it nervousness, anxiety, and the way you might feel that you're out in the ocean by yourself. Maybe when you're doing your own self-project, you feel that way as well. But when you're in the midst of it and you're actually playing the sport or doing what you love, it's extremely fulfilling. It's also very difficult for other people to relate to it, because this is something that you have intrinsically dove into. When you run your own race, you're going to run at a pace that makes sense for you. You're going to do something and learn something and challenge yourself. And you're going to have all this context of what you've done that the other person you might be interacting with has no idea. And then you get frustrated if they deviate from something that you suggest for them, because then it's like, oh, you don't understand my entire backstory, blah, blah, blah. And then you feel like you have to justify that. Which again, now you get caught in that situation of it not being what you want it to be, and you're doing it for someone else. So I always recommend people that if you are going to go and you're going to try and pursue something that you so desperately want, or you find enjoyment out of, run your own race and find individuals who do that very well and learn from them and watch them and think about how they do it. Because I cannot imagine being Caitlin Clark with that many people telling you you're not good enough, when you are objectively very good. To not be like, why don't you see it? Instead, she has to just go about her business, keep her head down, and the end result is so much more, I don't want to call it, it's so much more interesting for the consumer like myself, because then you see her out there, you see her playing her game and doing her thing, without ever telling you how good she is, just merely showing you. And there's something we lack so greatly in that, in our society and our schooling and how we do things nowadays, that it's a breath of fresh air to an extent. Now, when you're in competition, of course, there's going to be emotions. You're going to be bombastic at times. You're going to showcase certain things. But when you're pressed to validate or explain to someone why or why not you are good at something, and you merely just, I don't want to say ignore it, but just try to focus on what you have to do, there's a level of, again, I said admiration at the beginning of this that I have for someone who can do that. So I'm going to just keep it there for today about running your own race, and how that you can learn from athletes and individuals who are trying to do something that maybe is against the norm, not often done, something they might fail at, something they might be great at, yet others don't think they're great at. It's a very interesting perspective, and I, again, find it to be something personally difficult for myself, because it's something I want, and I would love for people to tell me, you're good enough to do it, Max. That'd be great. That ultimately doesn't even get me there at all. So I need to go focus on me and continue to work on me, just like you yourself, when you try to take on whatever project without the guardrails of structure being there, you focus on what you need to do. And it's a wonderfully difficult experience. It's very different than what you experience in life often, but it's something that I think is ultimately very rewarding, success or failure, because it's a challenge to yourself and an accountability to you at the highest of levels. So I appreciate you guys as always. I'm going to head back on out of here. The parking lot talk is done for the day. All right, take care.